Welcome back, everybody, to Kane's game review on After the Storm. This episode recapping game number 27 versus the Detroit Red Wings, a 2-1 win for the Carolina Hurricanes in their 8th straight win. All right, I'm going to be honest. This game is pretty boring. It's really not that whole, I'm not even going to get into recapping the game. I'm going to talk about the goals, and then I'm going to talk about other stuff. Because legit, there was this game was boring. This game was really boring, guys. It was really boring. The whole way through. Literally, there was lots of chances and everything, but this was just a 5 p.m. start that was just boring. But the Canes played well. I'm not saying that they're playing a boring style of hockey or anything. It's just the game ended up being boring. But they played really well. Again, this is 8 straight wins. They're doing it without top players in the lineup, too. This is absolutely ridiculous. This team is for real. And right now, they've got 3 legitimate goalies. I know I just pissed somebody off, saying James Reimer's a legitimate goalie. James is a legitimate goalie. He's just certainly not as good as Ned or Peter Mrazek is at this point. Actually, I shouldn't say that because we don't really know what Peter Mrazek is. Mrazek has played a handful of games this year, and I'm not saying he's not a good goaltender. He's definitely a 1A in the league, pretty much on every team around this league, I would say. But what we don't know is the extent of the injury and what kind of Peter Mrazek we're going to get. In typical goalie fashion, sometimes there's great years and sometimes there's bad years. So with that in mind, Canes have 3 legitimate goalies, and we can't really sacrifice putting one on waivers, I think. Although I think Reimer would clear. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. That's something for the future. What we know right now is probably going forward beyond this season, Mrazek should be the starter, with Nedeljkovic being kind of the 1B because he has certainly earned it. So let's jump into the game. The little bit I'm gonna spend on the game this time around because this one was boring. Not a whole lot happened, and we won. Of course, Nedeljkovic starting this one. Teravainen, Gardner, Trocheck, Mrazek all still injured. Bernier's in net for Detroit. I don't even know. I guess the only thing we really knew about Detroit in this one was no Evgeny Svechnikov. First period was just solid goaltending on both sides. Again, not a whole lot happened. Finished 0-0. Late in the second period, though, a short-handed goal. Dougie Hamilton coming down. Dougie Hamilton, I've been a little bit critical of Dougie this year. And I think for good reason. He's coming into a contract year. And his contract, as has been reported, he wants the Pietrangelo deal. He wants that $8.8 million over probably 7 or 8 years. And in order to get that, he needs to be consistently Dougie Hamilton. He can't have, when you're getting paid that much, you can't really have off games. If you look around the league, do guys like Austin Matthews, even though, again, this is 3 and a bit more million than Hamilton's likely to come in at, but does Austin Matthews have an off night? Does Sebastian Aho on this team, he gets paid $8.455 million. Does he come in and ever have an off night? When you go up to that level of pay, you have to come and play for 82 games a season in a regular year. And you have to be consistent. You have to be the best version of yourself. Otherwise, that's going to be a contract that is tough. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. My preference is to go about 5 or 6 years with Dougie. I think with the leg injury and potentially more injuries accruing, it's best to go 5 or 6. If he wants that 7th or 8th year, hopefully that price drops down a little bit. Again, if it was on the table, $7.5 million for 8 years, I would sign it. But he is returning for sure to the Hamilton that we saw last year, who was a Norris contender along with Slavin. And this goal was just perfect. 2-on-1, he actually breaks up the pass that was going in front on the power play for Detroit. Comes down the ice 2-on-1 with Sebastian Aho. Kind of, you know what? He was looking at Aho for a pass most of the time, and then as soon as he decided to shoot it, boom, toe drag shot, perfect one past Bernier, and the Canes lead 1-0. And that's how the second period would end. Again, a very slow game, not a whole lot of chances. This was probably the best chance of the game, and Hamilton made no mistake. Into the third period, though, a huge save by Alex Nedeljkovic, who's just been so damn good. We're going to get to him a little bit later. The puck comes down the other way. Nino Niederreiter, who's just been phenomenal so far to start this season. He's returned to the Nino of old. that 20 to 25 goal pace that he is typically playing on. He's probably playing a little bit above that right now. But yeah, he comes down left side, comes into just past the dot, snipes it past Bernier, that low glove side, which has just plagued the Red Wings and Nashville a lot, actually, too. He gets it past him, his 12th of the season. What a start for him. I should stop saying start. We're like game 27. Yeah, we're past the midway point of the season, or just coming out to the midway point of the season. So, yeah, with this, it's not a great start. He's having a good season. Canes lead 2-0, and that would take us to the final minute of the game. And honestly, if they could stop doing this would be great. I'd love for Nedeljkovic to get a shutout, or more than one. Anyways, Anthony Mantha on the opposite side half boards. He kind of just fires a shot through, hits Sebastian Aho's skate, deflects past Alex Nedeljkovic, and it's 2-1. But again, I think you could kind of sense, if you were watching this game, this wasn't going to be a game where Detroit was actually going to claw back. I don't even really think they had an extra chance after this one. And the game ends 2-1. Carolina wins 8th straight victory. Their first time being the first team in the NHL. Again, the wording was a little bit weird here from the Canes account. But the first time in franchise history that the Canes are the first team in the NHL to reach 20 wins. So coming out of the game, you know what? I just want to talk about Alex Nedeljkovic. I've got a couple tweets primed here. First one here from Brett Finger. Alex Nedeljkovic's last 6 starts, 5-1-0, a .950 save percentage, 9 goals against. He has not allowed more than 2 goals in a game since February 17th. And let's bring up the second tweet here. At Future Canes Alex on Twitter. Nedeljkovic is a legitimately good NHL goaltender. Say it again for the Canes Facebook fans who constantly want to trade a goalie after a goal. But yeah, he is proven, like he's come in, like, you know what's weird is last season, I know this is a whole year ago, but last season when Reimer and Mrazek went down in the Toronto game and we had to rely on Forsberg and Nedeljkovic, Ned just didn't seem ready. Like, he won a game against Pittsburgh, but he didn't seem sure, in a word. And in some respects, the best thing that could have possibly happened to Carolina was the COVID stoppage, because I'm not sure down the stretch how well that team would have performed. They were struggling at that point, but having to rely on Nedeljkovic and Forsberg for probably the next couple weeks there might have just sank the season. With Nedeljkovic, he seems confident and he's played extremely well. I know he's got a great team in front of him, but one thing is he's just done this with so much less goal support than James Reimer has. And that's the main difference for me. Like, he's doing this with a team that isn't performing as well in front of him on a nightly basis than what James Reimer receives. Reimer receives a ton of goal support in this league, and it's just been nuts. It's been nuts to see this because Nedeljkovic has, every one of these games, he talked about the 6 that Brett mentioned here, every one of these games he's come in and just stood on his head. I want to talk about just a group of players and what is probably going to happen in the offseason. I know we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but let's start talking about what's got to happen with Seattle, what's got to happen with free agency, and what we're seeing from this team. So to start off with, I want to talk about the 3, McGinn, Martinook, and Foegele. I put out a tweet earlier talking about how Geekie and Lorentz have really made those 3 guys expendable. And obviously there's one of those guys I would keep, and that's Brock McGinn. Again, I think there's a lot of stuff that Martinook brings to the room. For Christ, he's an assistant captain on this team. But man, he gets paid $2 million. We cannot be paying Jordan Martinook $2 million. Like, this cap is going to stay flat for 4 years. You can't be spending. You have to take what you can get with this. It's tough. This is what it's going to be. It's going to be tough with Hamilton and Svechnikov potentially being extended for big money. So that's going to require the Canes to get creative. And creative is not keeping Martinook at $2 million. Creative is not looking to extend or, go even more money. Rare is the time that a player in this league below the age of 30 takes a pay decrease. So in talking about that, Martinook, McGinn, and Foegele, all 28 and below, if they're not looking to take a pay decrease, they're probably going to need to move on. And now you've got Lorentz and Geekie who are actively pushing these guys out the door. And not only are these guys pushing these guys out the door, You also have a whole group of guys in Chicago and in the Canadian Hockey League in Russia right now that are just streamlining to the NHL. The way the Canes have drafted and their prospects right now just have been phenomenal. It's an interesting time because we're looking at a real big shift in what that bottom six looks like over the next couple seasons. But what I think personally, I think you move on from Martinook. I think you move on from Foegele. Whether or not you try to ensure that there's a deal to be made with Seattle where they get Foegele and a pick, for instance, or if Fogel's part of the Eric Stahl trade, that is inevitable. Eric Stahl rather is coming to Carolina at this trade deadline. Okay, I don't know that, but I'm manifesting it. I think you've got to just seriously consider moving on from... Brock is the guy I bring back. Hopefully he'll take a little bit of a pay cut, maybe like 1.85 or something, just to come down from that 2.1. But really, when there's a couple things to look at here, and one is the addition of Jesper Fast. I think this really flies under the radar. As Fast was most likely brought in to play bottom six. He can kind of play all the way through the lineup, of course, but I truly believe that Fast was a replacement for Foegele, McGinn, or Martinook. So with that, Geekie and Lorentz emerging here, you've probably got a case to move on from two of those three players. And those two would be Martinook and Foegele for myself. The time to get creative and rely on entry-level contracts, like we don't even think about this right now, but next season at this time, we're going to be talking about the Martinichis extension. That's going to be a big one. So the time is now to get creative with this team and figure out what we're going to do with these free agents and what we're going to do with, like, Morgan Geekie needs a contract this offseason. He'll probably sign for a couple of years at a low rate, just to prove he's NHL worthy and then get a contract later. But with the way he's been playing, Lorentz is thankfully signed next year at $725,000. I think that would be probably more likely to be our new bottom six. And I think to an extent also, I want to bring up Cedric Paquette. We haven't talked about him yet here. I think that's a guy who might take a pay decrease if everything goes well in the playoffs. But thankfully, none of these guys have signed beyond this season, and therefore we don't need to worry about protecting any of them. I wonder if Jesper Fast is a casualty of Seattle. Seattle's just so interesting, Even just beyond looking at the Canes, like they're just interesting to look at in terms of who they're going to take, or maybe there's a deal to take, or a deal to make, rather, moving a player there in a pick. Carolina they have a bunch of sevenths. So I don't know about giving up a second or something or whatever. We'll see how the deadline goes as well. I'm getting a little rambly here, but the point is there's a lot of guys. There's probably a handful of guys that could probably move on from the team this offseason, and I think we have seen Morgan Geekie, Steven Lorentz. There's a potential Seth Jarvis could be on this team next year. There's a lot of guys who are knocking at that door, and the Canes are going to really need to get creative and find a way to save some money over the coming years, because the potential Hamilton deal and the absolutely happening Svechnikov deal, they're going to be big. Anyways, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up down below. And remember to subscribe to the channel for more content. And as always, guys, I will catch you on the next one.